So what Durkheim thinks he's doing is he is showing how these collective representations have come about in the world. Collective representations for him are things like symbols. Oops. Hold on, I gotta reset my timer here. They're things like symbols, ideas, ideals, all related to what are the most important things of society. So in those mechanical solidarity, simple turtle clans, a collective representation might be the turtle. But in our world, it becomes much more complex. And so we have all sorts of symbols and ideals that are always kind of roaming around in the social world, not roaming around, but are out there in the social world and are also inside of us. And this is key because according to Durkheim, quote, social life is only possible thanks to a vast symbolism, unquote. What he's saying here is that the way we think, the way we make sense of the world is only possible because of the way the social world has been categorized and made sense of back to us. And this is a tricky process because like those early clans and the turtles, we have actually looked out as a society, kind of divided, have seen ourselves, our social group, which is complex, this organic solidarity he talked about, and therefore there is a complexity that comes back to us in our minds and how we make sense of the world. And so these collective representations, which I'll give you some examples of in a minute, literally make the world possible because they allow us to think and to understand the world. They transmit the world. So we transmit it from generation to generations by these big symbols, by these collective representations that are out there. Collective representations they're based in who we are as a social group, so they don't exist without us, and importantly, we don't exist without them. They actually sustain us. They make our life possible. And importantly, collective representations, this symbolic life of society, they orient society and they orient us as individuals. So they provide the symbolic glue that keeps the moral order of society together. So I've been talking rather abstractly here, so let me give you examples. How about this one? The phrase, bear down. So this symbol or this ideal, and it's connected with the wildcat and Wilma and Wilbur, actually expresses something that our social group, the University of Arizona, thinks about itself. And that maybe in the most difficult circumstances of our athletic or spiritual lives and our student lives, we're supposed to think about bear down, work hard, stay focused. We're supposed to bring this ideal to life inside of us, and by doing so, it supposedly draws something stronger out of us and, importantly, reconnects us to the University of Arizona community. Here's another example of a collective representation. And remember, collective representations are society's own projection of itself out onto the world, and then those things come back and help society think about itself. So as the turtle clan did by projecting itself onto the turtle and using that symbol to mark its members and to mark its territory and to mark its clothing, we're doing the same thing. We're projecting out, bear down, we're people that are tough and will fight to the last possible moment. And then having created this ideal out there, this symbol out there, it now acts back on us because it actually is in our brain. It's in the way we think about things. So bear down was one example. What about this? How about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier? If you've ever been to Washington, D.C., this is a fascinating example of a collective representation because all it is simply a body. But it's a body that's anonymous. It's encased in the stone monument. There's always a flame burning. It's always protected by soldiers who are marching by. And so it actually embodies for us this sense that we may be one individual, but our individual lives are unique and reverential, and that we should be willing to give our lives as these persons did for the survival of our society despite the fact that we could be completely unknown. And so that ideal, that symbol out there that acts back on us, inspires us in moments, especially those moments where we may be tempted to do things for selfish reasons or grandiose reasons. This is meant to instead kind of orient us to do things because things are right on behalf of the social group. And that feeling, that sense of that it's the right thing to do is because that symbol has come alive in us. How about, here's another example. The flag, the American flag. Now, not to be too contentious, but after all, American flag is only a piece of cloth. It's actually a design that's developed over time, and sure, the stars represent 50 states and the bars represent something too, but that's the point, they represent something. So that flag, that piece of cloth, is actually our own projection, our own creation of the object to represent who we are, and then it becomes imbued with us in a deepest level. That's us. So when it goes into battle, it's an honor for a soldier to carry it. Or we have really tough fights in the courts about, can you burn a flag? Is flag burning actually destroying something that is not just a symbol, but is society itself? So that emotion, that connection that we hear in these debates and we see focused around something like a flag is great evidence that this is a symbol that is really it is who we are, and it acts back on us to keep us alive, to keep us together, to glue us together. And there are other ideals that we could think of that are collective representations. How about the idea of tolerance in the modern world? So things, if we hear somebody, if we're on the street and we hear somebody say, your type doesn't belong here, well, that actually violates a core ideal, a core sense of who we are, that there is that diversity and difference exists, but our society is tolerant and allowing this diversity and difference to have rights and to have a place in our social world. Again, that's a collective representation, projection of who we are, who we think we are as a social group, and importantly, what we want to be. And then it acts back on us. So when we hear somebody say something like, your type's not welcome here, we react because that value or that symbol has become such a part of who we are. We could go on and on with examples here of symbols and ideals, but I think you get the point of how these collective representations, how they help a society to actually think, to actually be combined together. And Durkheim had a really cool phrase for this effect of these collective representations, which was that eventually we had a collective conscience. So over time, and by nature of the social world, these collective representations, these symbols, have glued us together so that we are not our own individuals. As individualistic as we think we can be, we can never float outside of society, according to Durkheim. We are first and foremost social animals, raised in this thick collective conscience. And this collective conscience makes it seem that the social world around us seems sacred. It seems external because the power is so strong, but really it becomes internalized within us. We begin to feel respect for society and the social world because these collective representations bring us together. Durkheim will write and will say things like this, quote, "It is society that speaks through the mouths of those that affirm ideals. It is society that we hear when we hear these ideals, and the voice of society has a tone that's within individuals." I actually paraphrase that quote because it was a long one. But he has these quotes where he talks about moral order, social moral order, is possible because we have so imbued society within ourselves, and this all happens kind of at unconscious levels, but also because this thing, society, is out there surrounding us at all times. Durkheim writes, quote, "We defer to society's orders not simply because it is equipped to overcome our resistance, but first and foremost because it is the object of genuine respect," close quote. So Durkheim, unlike Gramsci, that would look around in his concept of hegemony and see control and power at work as what's keeping a society together, Durkheim says, what keeps society together instead is this vast network of symbols and idea that forms a collective conscience, so that when we in us have a tough decision or are feeling a certain way, those feelings and that stirring within us is actually society speaking, society at work, because we have projected society out into these ideas and symbols, and they have come back imbued back within us. And so humans, us individuals out here working and acting in the world, we are actually constantly in our lives called to transcend ourselves in order to live in society. So we'll orient towards these collective representations. We'll tap into this deep collective conscience because it's such a part of us, and we'll actually be pulled beyond ourselves. We have these feelings of doing something that's right or that's good beyond ourselves. That's because we are noting society, and we are willingly doing what society asks of us, because society is what allows us to exist. It's because it's what's filtered into our thought categories, it's what's filtered into our feelings, it's who we are. So yes, we're individuals, but yes, we're social individuals first and foremost. Now let me pause here, and I'm going to get back to another key element that Durkheim traced from looking at these primitive religions. Now remember, we started this whole discussion from this idea of collective representation, but Durkheim has another key part of this system, and that's the idea of ritual, which I'll come to next.